This show is supported by Twin Cities Eye Consultants. If you're watching the match, checking stats, and following social media all at once, your eyes are working overtime. Give them support at tcecmn.com. Welcome in, Loons fans, to another edition of the Matchday Preview presented by Twin Cities Eye Consultants. Jonathan Harrison here, joined once again by Manny Lagos. Manny, how are you doing today? We've got so much to discuss, so much on the rundown today. How are you doing on this fine Thursday across Minnesota?
My theme is a little bit like the excitement I have for our guest, who it's basically his show anyways. But given the result and how we played, and obviously some big news internally within the club, I'm excited for the show. I feel like I'm a little bit reinvigorated about where we're going to go with this podcast today. Lots of soccer to talk about, a lot of fun stuff, a lot of real serious stuff within the internal side of the club as well.
So, as you mentioned there, Manny, we've got a special guest, Jon Marthaler of JonMarthaler.com, joining us once again. And as you said, it does feel like his show with how often he's been on lately. It feels like every other show. Jon, you've been joining us. Appreciate you stopping by once again. Go subscribe to his newsletter over at JonMarthaler.com. Provides excellent analysis of the team. Jon, how are you doing? I know we've got plenty to discuss, and we'll get into that in a minute, but it's a nice day across the state, and we got the state fair starting. So it's a glorious time to be in our lovely state.
Yeah, this is peak Minnesota right here.
We
can talk about the fair. Manny and I were just chatting about road construction. This is as Minnesotan as we can get. Let's make it all happen with Minnesota.
By the way, we talked about road construction to the fair even. We really went deep.
It was fair-related road construction talk.
Yeah.
I don't think you can get more Minnesotan than that.
No. Sorry you missed out, Jonathan. Sorry you missed out.
Sorry, dealing with kids, so I missed out on the exhilarating road construction to the fair talk. Which
I'm energized.
We'll try and work it in so we can energize the Loons fan base. All right, normally we start with a look across MLS, but I want to jump into the big news of the week, Manny. Khaled El Ahmad heading off to Austin FC, parting ways with the club. Your take on this and kind of the viewpoint of the club from the inside on how everything broke down here, what this means for Minnesota United. Hank Stebbins stepping in as the interim sporting director. We'll get into his background and details, but overall, your thoughts, Manny, from the inside, and then Jon, I'll get yours from the outside.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly think, Jon's perspective is unique. He was obviously, I don't know if he's at the press conference with Christina and Hank, but there's no doubt. I mean, it was a little bit of a surprise in terms of how this happened. At the same time, I think the club is aware and is prepared for anybody leaving, because nobody's bigger than the club, and people leave. And particularly at higher level executive roles, people will come and go. And so with that, I think the club's ready to deal with it. It's never ideal, the timing at the end of a transfer window. But, I can say internally, I thought the club absorbed the news and really I think is in a different place maybe than had been in the past, in terms of we have a lot of things set in place and we've been doing that. It kind of just builds as is in terms of the day-to-day kind of roll up your sleeves functioning. And there's no doubt, getting Hank on board as an interim sporting director, I think was really important. And obviously we've had a signing since then, and we're still working very hard towards the end of the transfer window. So it does. I don't want to gloss over the reality that this year has been filled with adversity for the club. When you think about the coaching staff leaving, you think about now a CEO leaving, and now our GM / chief soccer officer transitioning out too. I like it. I want to really observe. I want to say, hey, the club can withstand it. Like I said, I think no one person is bigger than the club. Every time somebody comes and goes, I think there's an opportunity for the club to learn and get better. And I think that's the attitude that I felt internally within the sporting department and then the entire club. And certainly I think Christina is handling it really well. Sherry is still on boarding, off boarding as well. So there's good people, I think, dealing with, kind of what could have been, I think, even more stressful, tough issue.
Yeah, only coming a couple of years after joining the club, John. A big surprising move happening, as Manny said, at the end of the transfer window. Not always the easiest time ever to have this kind of a transition in your front office. From the outside perspective, you were at the press conference with Hank introducing him as the interim sporting director. Your thoughts on kind of how this all shook out from the outside, and your thoughts on where this leaves the club going into the second half of the season and the final weeks of the transfer window this summer.
First of all, given everything that's happened with the club, I just need to make some quick notes. Manny, are you quitting?
I am not. I am here.
Okay. Go. Jonathan, are you quitting?
No, I'm here for the long haul.
Okay, so that's two. We got those marked down in the staying camp, but everybody else is kind of up for grabs right now. From the outside perspective, I think we don't talk enough about the optimism of Austin FC ownership. Hiring a CSO who's willing to leave the team with 2 weeks to go in a transfer window with a whole bunch of business undone. I'm sure they won't do that to you either, Austin. So good for you. That's optimism right there. I appreciate.
I'm sorry for laughing, Jonathan. I mean, there's that sarcasm had a lot of insight in it. I'll say that. So that was very well done. Sorry, Brett.
I was at the press conference with Christina Hennington and with Hank, and I was a little bit surprised how so often with these changes there's sort of a tendency to reinforce, like, listen, we have planned for this. This happened when Eric Ramsey left. There was certainly a tendency for everyone to go, listen, we have a plan for this. Don't worry about it. We always knew this was a possibility. We've absolutely planned for this. And with that one, it was like, yeah, this caught us off guard. We were just as shocked as you were.
It was true.
This happened. And we are doing our best. And I think very highly of Hank Stebbins. And I think the fact that he was already in the club and it wasn't like, all right, we're bringing in some guy from outside that's going to be the interim CSO in a total change of direction. I think that absolutely helps, but certainly I was struck by how much it was like, yeah, they didn't come right out and say, yes, this caught us off guard, we are scrambling, but that was certainly like, yeah, we're very surprised. That was the words that Christina Hannington used. Yeah, we're very surprised by what happened.
Yeah, I think that's fair. It was a very surprising move. As you said, John, Hank Stebbins taking over the role in an interim role as the new search begins. Think very highly of him. We had him on a couple years ago on a podcast discussing some of the transfer moves. I believe that was after the Yeboah and Pereira signings, if I'm remembering correctly. It was a couple years ago now, but a really good conversation, really good insight into what his role is, Manny. For those who didn't listen, who don't know Hank Stebbins, what's his background? What does he bring to that role as an interim basis in this role for the next couple months or however long the search lasts?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I've known Hank for many years. Obviously, brought him into the club, and he's somebody I think really has a good background in a lot of different things. But his title is head of recruitment, roster strategy negotiation. He has a legal background. He does love soccer too. Even at some point in his journey, was an assistant coach for a college team for a little bit. He cares about the soccer side, I think, really well. But he also, I think, has worked really closely with how we've built out the process of our scout and recruitment and negotiation. I think that's the key word in there, which means a lot of the negotiating starts with Hank and sometimes, frankly, ends with him in terms of that. So he's done a lot in the process area of the roster build and roster management. That really channeled through him right up to college. So I think from those aspects, it was probably the timing caught us off guard, as Christina said, but I think we were also okay with Hank taking over to end this window because he's really been on the day-to-day part of it as well. So, listen, I think I mentioned it the other day where a lot of our staff now in the sporting department has been through a lot of different shakeups and different stuff, which I would say is a sign that we also have a lot of good staff that has done really well here and likes to be here, even though we lost somebody that said, oh, want to go to Austin. So really excited to have Hank on board. I think he's going to do a great job as an interim here. And at the same time, I do get a little bit of my Minnesota side where we've built a lot of good pieces and a lot of good structure within this club, and a lot of people are here, want us to be here. And, you get to a point where if somebody doesn't want to be here, it's actually creating an opportunity that they're gone. And I know that sounds a little bit like I'm frustrated. I'm not. I'm just very clinical in that we want to be here. We want people that want to be here and help us win championships. And if they don't want to be here, we move on as quickly as we can. And again, I'm going to go back to the theme. Nobody is bigger than the club. And I really don't want anybody in the club who doesn't want to be here.
John, when you look back, I know when one era ends and you begin a new era, when someone leaves, it's always one of the first things you do is look back and kind of do a quick review of what that time was. So what's your review as you look back on the 2 years that Khaled El-Ahmad was the chief soccer officer here at Minnesota United? What's your review of kind of where this club, where he got the club and where he took it in that time? I mean, you had one of the best seasons in this club's history last year, but obviously it hasn't. This season has been a bit stop and start for the most part, but your thoughts on kind of his time as the CSO of this club?
Yeah, I sort of went back and looked at all the signings that got made over the last couple of years, and really there were more hits than misses. I know there's certainly a tendency for people who are making personnel decisions in any sport to sort of focus on their worst three moments or their worst three calls. But there were a lot of hits in there. There was, Kelvin Yeboah overall has been a guy who's played a lot and scored a lot. Joaquin Pereira, good player to sign. Guy like Jefferson Diaz, who was not a guy that anybody really sort of had on their radar, has come in and played a ton of games for Minnesota. Just in terms of bringing in guys who were going to fit into the system and who were going to play a ton. And he's moved some guys on and gotten real good value for a guy like Kervin Arriaga or even for Taniolo O'Shea. Just he's done pretty well, I would say, with both the ins and the outs. And he developed the way that he ran the team, and from hiring Eric Ramsey and sort of building an identity for the club that sort of fit in with where Minnesota has positioned itself in terms of the general MLS landscape. So I think that's good. I think ending sort of the way it did this week it's going to color people's memory a little bit, I think. But overall, I think it's been a positive tenure. I think you'd have to rate it more good than bad.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, we talk about the player signings, but the coaching signing is one of them. You got Eric Ramsey, absolutely right. A guy who hadn't had a head coaching role before coming here at the first team level, and he knocked it out of the park with that one. Obviously, with the quick departure ahead of this season, that changes things, and they adjusted on the fly. But yeah, I think overall it's more positive than good. I know there will be a lot of looks at the transfer misses, but you look at the transfer hits, and those are certainly big hits for Minnesota United. All right, let's jump back into Minnesota United in a little bit. I want to look back across the league. A busy week across Major League Soccer. Manny, you mentioned it before the show, and we didn't get any notes from MLS, so we're going to talk about it. Leagues Cup, all Liga MX teams in the semifinals going forward. All 4 MLS teams knocked out in the quarterfinal stage. Your thoughts on what you saw in this tournament from MLS teams, and I guess your review of the knockout rounds over the past couple days.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give a little bit of a defense for MLS, and which we're a part of, by the way, in terms of it's really interesting in that, the League MX is built where it's top heavy, where you have 4 to 6 teams that are always really the best, almost always, like literally always the best, and then there's a huge drop off. MLS's league is built a little bit more in parity, and year in and year out, it could be a different top 4 popping up, or 6 teams every year. So in defense of MLS is not having any teams in the semifinals, this tournament might not always be the best because the teams that are popping for MLS are playing against always this traditional best teams in Liga MX. So that's my defense. On the negative side, it's pathetic that you have 4 games, some at home sites, and you lose all 4, and you have this Leagues Cup that's supposed to be a competition between the 2 best leagues in this hemisphere outside of Brazil, maybe. And now you have no MLS teams representing the semifinal. I don't think that's not a good day for MLS. Like, it's just not. I mean, we got to have some teams at least in the semifinals.
No, in 4 games and only 1 goal scored, and then it's not really the best of showings this season from MLS in the Leagues Cup, John. And I know you talked about it a couple weeks ago when the knockout stages were set, and how it was, as Manny pointed out, a very different look from both leagues, where you have the top teams in Liga MX, and then you have some of the teams that MLS marketing may not want because they're not the big cities, the big clubs in the world, but or in the league, but they are some of the better teams or they're playing some of the better soccer right now in this league, but they just didn't go through and didn't get the job done in the quarterfinal stages over the past couple of days, John.
Yeah, it wouldn't be such a big deal to face plan again as a league if it didn't keep happening over and over again. Like if this hadn't been the story that has defined the competition between Mexico and the United States and Canada for the last 20 years. If this was an outlier, it'd be one thing, but it's absolutely not an outlier. And I think it's interesting that Manny sort of touched on a little bit of the decision that MLS is making that maybe is contributing to this. There's sort of a push-pull in attention, and this is especially true as MLS is deciding where they want to go with their roster rules and how rosters are constructed in the next few years. There's sort of that push-pull between, do you want to be like the most popular sports league that has ever been in the United States, which is defined by parity more and more. Like every team in the NFL is going to finish either 9-8 or 8-9 this year, near as I can tell. Except the New York Jets will be 0-17. But other than that, it's just every game is
John,
every game
I
is
heard the
close.
Dolphins are supposed to be bad this year. I know I'm not the football guy,
But every game is closed in the fourth quarter. It's a very even league. The most popular soccer league on the planet is the Premier League, which it has some teams that obviously do well, but mostly is defined by not having parity, having big teams at the top. That's the story of big European soccer leagues. Is you've got the behemoths and you've got the minnows, and you go that way. So which is better? Which way does MLS want to go? I think they are going to have to make a decision as they go forward. And obviously, from a Minnesota perspective, one of those is way better than the other if they decide to go one way other than the other one. So I think using this, it's sort of a tiny little lens to look at the bigger picture from just one night of MLS teams face planning. But I think Manny touching on that is a good call. I think that's
there's a new CBA coming up.
Yep.
There's a new leadership running MLS. There's going to be a lot of energy about how do we generate revenue to build our rosters and compete with some of these global teams in the future. So, I don't. My viewpoint is I still gravitate towards the parity, but I might be biased, But I do think there's a uniqueness of 30 MLS teams versus League MX has the teams in the semifinals, but there's a huge cliff where MLS would really do well against the rest of the teams in their league.
And if the NBA is anything to go on, just turn around and sell every one of the teams. They're worth 3 times more than they were this time last week. You just bought a team, perfect. Turn around and flip it. It's HGTV.
I did not expect sports teams to start being the next house flipping market that we'd see. That's an interesting development.
Very
for sure.
true.
I didn't think the LA Lakers were crypto, but I guess they are.
Next up, Dodgers. All right. Elsewhere across the league, some big moves, transaction-wise and transfer-wise. Manny, I texted you this one. Dejan Juvelic heading off to Seattle. I texted you my reaction to that because that was a guy that I liked in Sporting Kansas City, and obviously scoring bucket loads of goals over the past couple years on maybe one of the worst teams in this league's history over the past year and a half, and he's still contributing goals by the dozens. That's a big move for Seattle, a big move for Jovelic, big move for Sporting Kansas City. This is a huge move for this league because he's not just the first player to move from the cash for era. He's also the first player to move twice via cash for. So congratulations, Jovelic. You've got that as a little moniker for your career. But your thoughts on this move, what it means for Seattle, what it means for Sporting Kansas City.
I mean, he's a great goal scorer. In the box, he's just clinical, deadly. He does need the service, and at times he's not the best presser and athletic kind of defender on the opposite side of the ball. But if you think about what Seattle's probably excited about, is they've always had great forwards. You think of Rudy Diaz, and you think of Clint Dempsey, Obafemi Martin. So this is clearly like them saying, "Hey, we need that kind of." forward again that just gave us some moxie and gave us some kind of identity that no matter what, we're going to find goals. And obviously they've been kind of a little bit down this year and they've got so many injuries. It's hard for me to figure out if that's even at this year going to help them get the service in the box they needed to get him going with goals. But it's a big move. But it's also a move for Kansas City in a way that I think they're probably in this long-term project of like, we want to like almost tear a few things down and build back up. But you do get nervous just because, again, they've been struggling to figure out what their identity is going to be for a while now. But it certainly sounds like they have a new owner as well, speaking of flipping, that wants to invest in Kansas City. And maybe they're looking for a higher level forward than Jovic. So.
Say hello to the Hello Kitty Ticket Pack. Starting from just $34, this package includes a ticket to Minnesota United's October 28th matchup against Sporting Kansas City, plus a reversible Hello Kitty MNUFC bucket hat. Learn more at mnufc.com/tickets. Yeah, it's an interesting move for Sporting Kansas City, who continues to tear everything down to the studs. Speaking of Sporting Kansas City, John, they just announced, and it just became official over the past couple days, Owen Wolff, former attacking former central midfielder from Austin FC, going to Sporting Kansas City in a big move there. That's a bit of a surprising move, going from one Western Conference team to another as well. A kid who's had a lot of promise and shown a lot of development over the past couple of years in that midfield role. And now he's going to go to Sporting Kansas City as they look to kind of reset after the past couple of years.
Yeah, you say they're tearing it down to the studs, but they kind of were already done. Now they're just knocking studs out.
Yeah.
Now you just got a sledgehammer and you're like,
they're taking out the foundation now.
Let's see. Knock that out and see. I don't think this one's load bearing. Let's see what happens here.
Elsewhere across the league, we got plenty of games going on across the league this weekend. Nashville continue to score goals, complete a 3-2 comeback win over Columbus. Manny, this is now a 9-point lead in the Supporter Shield race going into the second half of the season. Is that lead kind of insurmountable for the rest of the teams chasing them? And what are your thoughts on Nashville at this point kind of running away with things?
I mean, we got to remember at this time of the year, we always think we're closer to the playoffs, but because of the World Cup, there's still 12 games left. So they still have a lot of work to do. But I've said this a lot on the show. When you find a team that wins games that they should lose and then also wins games that they should tie, man, it seems like they're going to have a special year. In Nashville, this game, go watch the highlights, just how they came back and won that at home and against a really good Columbus team. And then now you have that 9-point lead in the Supporter Shield. I still don't think it's insurmountable. This is the MLS. I especially, given the kind of teams that between Vancouver and Miami, I think there's some teams that can figure out ways to catch them. But they look solid. I mean, what a trade for Espinoza last year. They've added some great defensive pieces. Andy Nahar is starting to feel like ageless Frankie Hajduk kind of player, like just keeps running up and down that wing and contributing offensively. Very balanced, good team, very good team.
Really fun team to watch, John, as they kind of overtake the Eastern Conference and look to stake a claim as maybe one of the best teams in league history, on track for I think 80 points, which would set a new record. They've been a really fun team to watch this season. It
feels like every year there's a team that is challenging the points record in MLS. Like we talk about parity, and yet every year it's like, okay, this team is on pace for 97 points this year. Challenge for 122 points. It's always, I guess this is the year that Austin FC is going to be challenging for 127 points, the mathematically impossible number.
Also,
I was trying to think of a random team for that. Why did I come up with Austin instead of Real Salt Lake? Real Salt Lake's who I always use in that situation.
We started the show talking about Austin. They're still on your mind.
There's still a lot of it. Yeah, there's a lot. Austin is on our minds a lot for a lot of reasons. So yeah, a lot. Yeah.
Quickly across the Western Conference, Vancouver, a 5-0 win over Dallas. Looks like they're back at the top of the Western Conference. Houston
Yeah.
Houston continuing to have a really impressive season, Manny, but they lose to St. Louis 2-1 this weekend, who continue just their incredible run over the past couple months. St. Louis beating a Houston team that is contending for the top of the Western Conference to surprise a lot of people, but St. Louis equally, or maybe more so surprising this season.
Yeah, I think when you're obviously now fully, Vancouver has shown that they've been one of the better teams in the league for the last couple of years, which has been so rare. And I think it took me a long time to get Vancouver in that mode, but I've been in that mode. And so great result, great win for them, but they've also deserved that the way they've been playing over the last couple of years in the league. Houston and St. Louis are new names to this list of the top of the West and how well they're playing. And certainly we've got Big 12 games ourselves. So we've got some teams that we need to kind of think about that haven't been at the top of the West. We've got some big games against these teams coming up, some massive games for us to kind of put our own playoff push and show what kind of team we are going into this final quarter of the season.
As we move into the Minnesota United side of this conversation, I do want to go back to the transfer side. Manny, you mentioned it and hinted at it earlier. Maurice Malone, new striker for the club, a big signing for Minnesota United. Your thoughts on what he brings, your scouting report on how he'll fit into Cameron Knowles' side this season?
Yeah, I think he just adds more active, physical running, hard running in the channels, hard running in the box. His goal output wasn't as high as maybe you'd want last year, but in the past it's been good. And he's somebody who I think is going to add some nice physicality to the forward line that has been trying to find itself. I mean, it's nice to do the show right now because I think we're going to have some nice comments about this weekend, last weekend, where we get to really talk about the positives of the offensive output for the first time in a long time. Then we get to talk about, was it real when we have a massive home game with that? And now just adding another offensive piece. We just had Aziel Jackson. It's kind of nice where now we maybe get to talk about what is Cameron Knowles going to do with these pieces we have? How is he going to get the most out of them? I don't know if we've had that kind of tenor of a conversation very often about our offense this year. We've been a little bit more defensive in terms of talking about it and just talking how imbalanced it is and how good we are defensively and how we've been struggling to find our identity offensively. Now I think we get on these kind of shows or from what we watch the games, talk more about is Cam using some of these offensive pieces in the right way to get the output we need.
John, your thoughts on this move and kind of how it fits into, I guess, the broader context of, I guess, the transfer talk and the transfer window conversation we've had about this club. You bring in AZ Jackson on loan. You bring in Maurice Malone here. Dominic Fitz, as it was announced earlier this morning, going on loan back to Austria. Your thoughts on how Maurice Malone fits in and so far the Loons transfer window and what you expect over the next week or so until the transfer window closes.
Yeah, we talk about optimism. Bringing in a guy from the Austrian league is kind of defines what optimism is right now for Minnesota, given what's been happening with Dominic Fitz. I'm kind of glad for Fitz that he gets to move on and do something different, a little bit of scenery for sure right now. As far as Morris, the reputation is that he's going to be a hard worker, a guy who's going to work hard in the press and stuff, and that obviously fits in really well with the way that the team had where he fits in terms of the pecking order, especially given that the team went out and scored 5 goals against San Jose with kind of a different look with Marcus Caldera and Kelvin Yeboah up front and Joaquin Pereira playing a little bit more underneath rather than as a wide forward like he's done a little bit in the past. So I think it's interesting to see how this is going to work and what is going to be the key to making all these forward pieces work together.
Yeah, I'm looking to see how this all fits together and what we see over the next couple days here from Minnesota United. All right, let's jump into this, Manny and John. A big win, a much needed win in many aspects this weekend. A 5-1 win for Minnesota United over the San Jose Earthquakes. Loons get sucker punched early, a penalty kick, and we can talk about that. But then in really nice response, you get a quick goal response and then a couple more coming in later in the half. And this was a really fun game, Manny, from a lot of aspects, but a very much needed game for Minnesota United that ends a really tough stretch of games.
Yeah, I mean, it's historic. I think there's so much to talk about in this game. There's so many things that happened that I think just are really special. And by the way, I mean, I the most special thing I'll start with second, but the first thing I would say is the 5-1 win is historic. 5 goals on the road, 4 goal differential win is the most we've ever had. Maybe we have to go to San Jose more. I think the 5-2 San Jose a couple years ago was the second best road result we've ever had. So pretty cool to see that. But I do want to start with the fact that I think arguably we saw the greatest maybe goal in the MLS era for Minnesota United. Maybe not. I mean, it's a good debate. I was there live, probably about 15 yards on the end line from it. When you have these two guys closing and there's only one option and there's only a very small percentage of people in the world can actually pull off that shot. And the timing of it, it was unbelievable. I mean, it was that good for me. I mean, I definitely think it should be in the goal of the year candidate. I don't know if the announcers, which is your role, Jonathan, did it justice, to be honest, because it happened so fast. It was just so like, did that just happen? But it was unbelievable. I mean, it just, what a way to kind of wake up an offense by scoring one of the better goals I've ever seen live.
I'll be honest, the angle that we had on the broadcast, we couldn't really see because there was a lot of guys around him. It was a really tight space. You couldn't really see that it was a Rabone, that he was wrapping his leg around. You just see that the ball kind of curls around a defender, kind of slowly trickles past Angus Gunn, the San Jose goalkeeper. So to be fair to Dan on the call, you couldn't really tell from our angle on the broadcast what it was.
By the way, but that's
afterwards, once you saw the replay, you're like, oh man. And
yeah,
it was a really great goal from Joaquin Pereira, and deservedly one of the best goals that we've seen in the season this year. So it was a really fun game for Minnesota. John, your thoughts on a big win for the Loons, a much needed win for Minnesota United?
Yeah, man, they've been having trouble finishing, but as it turns out, the secret to fixing the finishing was take your feet and put them in the wrong spots and kick from there. That has been that has been what the team's been looking for. It broke the dam. It broke the dam and the whole river rushed through.
Yeah, absolutely did. Let's talk about this from Kelvin Yeboah's standpoint. Let's start with him. A couple of goals for him on the night, becomes the team's leading, or tied for the team's most multi-goal games in MLS play. When you look at all competitions in the MLS era, he leads that. He took that lead with 8 across all competitions. A big night for him, Manny, a much needed night, as we're going to continue to say about this game, much needed from a lot of perspectives, but from Yeboah's in particular, a really good game from him, scoring a couple of goals late in that second half to give this team a big lead going into halftime and continue that going into the second half. But he really needed this night, and he showed out in a big way for the club.
Yeah, I think the old adage, defense creates offense, is part of where I think I'm going to go with my theme for the first half. If we're going to start talking tactics right now, we obviously got to talk about how Cam had some big decisions to make based on Caldera's been playing pretty well lately. Yeboah is still trying to find his form. Momo's coming in moments. And so first off, he decided to go with 2 forwards versus 1. A couple games ago, I think it's Vancouver, he did that. He had Momo and Yeboah. It didn't feel like it gave us a spark. But something about Cam, I think, wanting to have Yeboah and Caldera and seeing if that mix can get a spark. And then also, John kind of alluded to it, instead of kind of going with 2 number 10 offensive midfielders, which is kind of like the lineup du jour, I think, around the world, Cam went back to maybe a single offensive midfielder and then 2 kind of double pivot defensive midfielders in Owen and Trapp. And boy, did it feel right defensively. I thought we pressed really well. Caldera work rate was outstanding. Calvin was really hungry to press with Caldera together, which I think allowed that first half for us to just start getting that line high where, yes, there were some dangerous one-on-one moments with Dugan and Boxall, but when they started winning those battles, we just won the ball in good spots where we kept going forward and getting chances, and it just kind of steamrolled from there. And you just felt that we took over the game in that first half based on how hard it was for San Jose to get out and how good our press was. And it looked organized. It looked man-to-man in the right spaces where we were going to win and get a chance. And I think when that happens, you look at Owen and Will starting to get excited about going forward. The next thing you know, I thought Owen Jean had one of the better halves he's had for Minnesota United in a uniform, because he just made some amazing runs forward and set up the second and third goal, which is outstanding. Just a vertical running with the ball. So, but I think it did start with that defense. And I started with Calvin's attitude with Caldera to be hungry together to work and press and squeeze to make it hard for San Jose.
Yeah, those two up top was really fun to watch, for sure, John. And it certainly makes you think that that could be a lineup going forward, a decision for Cameron going forward, having Marcus and Kelvin up top together, because you have now, it seems like, the goal scoring threat back for Kelvin Yeboah alongside the great running, the great physical play from Marcus Caldera, who's also now getting his goal scoring boots on in league play. This was a really exciting front two for Minnesota, and really fun to see that hopefully develop as it goes forward. And hopefully we'll see that going forward, especially into this weekend where it's a big test, John.
I think it's interesting because you've got a number of options like Pereira, like Caldera, like Yeboah, all of whom you look and go, these are good players. Obviously, they are good players. They have had good moments. None of them are bad players. What do they do well? What do they do poorly? How do you fit those pieces together and put everybody in a role that maximizes what they're good at and minimizes what they're bad at? And I think, near as I could tell, they got closer to figuring out what that is and what that looks like on Saturday than they have all season. And in terms of confidence, it would take a very confident move as a coach to not go back with that and see if it works against a team that's a little less chaotic than San Jose is right now. Manny, I mean, you're a San Jose Earthquakes legend. What do you have to say about San Jose managing to be the best team in the league and the worst team in the league in the space of one single season?
Yeah, it's yeah. Would you start with like 9 wins and now I would say, well, just going back to us. Let's go back to the fact that you're
no,
literally.
I need your thoughts.
I'm going to get back to San Jose in a second, but I would say, you alluded to, like, it would be hard for Cam because it looked like such a great offensive defensive performance. It's hard to imagine any other lineup for Orlando because it looked like you said, putting that single Pereira as offensive midfielder, Ant and Duncan got forward amazingly. And so just things looked really organized and structured on both sides of the ball. But you brought up San Jose. You brought up, again, the worse San Jose does, the better I am, because my championship era is the only championship San Jose ever had since 1976. So when I go back, it's a great era of representing. I love it. I feel really good. But there is a reality here that they did not look good. Their midfield looked all over the place. Their back line doesn't seem like they're hungry to do 1v1 battles and really limit teams. Certainly going forward, they have a big danger, and they had some great players. And Timo Werner creates great chances. It does feel like if he doesn't score them, he kind of wilts throughout a little bit, like his head goes down, very similar to what happened in Europe with him. But man, they've got some great pieces going forward. I think they're really struggling with what does it mean when they can't get going forward and defensively in the midfield and back line there. And I would say their goalkeeping didn't look
terrible.
Well, you're harsher than me, but yes, that's probably the word you should use.
I mean, you were going to be nice there, so I just jumped in to just say it's awful. It's really bad. Yeah,
it did not look well. So, but they've got some big work to do. The amazing thing is they started the season so well. They're not out of it by any means. I'm sure they feel like it, given that they haven't won since the World Cup and they've played very poorly. I think the fans were really booing quite a bit and frustrated with some of the stuff going on for Bruce, but they have a chance to get out of it. I'm more curious for us because I want this to be about us playing so well and getting excited about that balance of offense and defense and press and winning the ball. And I think we'll learn a lot this weekend against Orlando. I think it's a massive game. I know we're not on to Orlando yet, but I think my brain can't imagine Cam changing things up. If he does, that's fine, by the way. But I really want to see this group have 2 good games in a row based on how good it looked last weekend.
I'll still talk about some of the other key performances in this match, but I do want to ask, because we're on this part of the conversation. John, for you, I'll start with you, then Manny. Because of how poorly San Jose have been playing, there can be a lot of questions about how real this performance was. So for you, when you look back at this match, you look at how well the Loons played and what they did well and how they really took advantage of some really poor areas and poor play by San Jose. how real was this performance from you? Because we know going into this game, the poor run that the Loons were on themselves. So is this just a blip, or was this the start of good things to come for Minnesota United? I know it's only one performance, so it's hard to judge and kind of figure out an answer for that. But I'm going to put you guys on the spot. What's your take on how real this performance was for Minnesota on the night?
I mean, you want to believe, don't you want to believe? I think everybody wants to believe, but you can't turn around and not remember that this is the same Minnesota team that I think this is still true. I haven't checked the standings this week, but they had lost to the worst team in Mexico, the worst team in the Western Conference, and the worst team in the Eastern Conference since the World Cup break. And that's hard to do. So it's still the same team. You want to believe that just sort of mixing and matching up front was the key that's going to unlock it. But you're playing against a San Jose team that looked defensively stronger when a toddler ran on the field. So it's hard to ignore that.
I was there. That was really impressive.
He just wanted to help his dad in goal. That's all.
Yeah.
How, Manny, you were there. How
Yes.
did a toddler get on the field? I still don't understand this.
So San Jose Stadium is really interesting in that they have a suite level, a little bit like the Viking Stadium, that's on the field. So it's
Right.
the bottom level of the concourse is the suite level. And some of these suites, and I think this one probably was the player suite. And so there's only on 3/4 of the stadium, there is like the electronic boards that would prevent the toddler. But on the one side of the suite level, it's just two thin bars, and then it's grass, and then the field. And it's a pretty big outdoor suite, and then there's a little bit of space indoor behind. So most people are just kind of hanging out outdoors. They're kind of, like suite people do. They maybe socialize while they're watching the game. And next thing you know, I think Jonathan just mentioned that it was I think a player's kid. So there might be a moment where daddy's but being there live was amazing because you're just like, oh my God, like it's on the screen and then you look on the field and it's right there. So it was really interesting. Going back to your other very good comments about our struggles, I think it's about the home struggles really too. I mean, I think we've been really good on the road. Obviously the Kansas City result was on the road, but overall it's been a great road year. It's been only 2 wins out of 10 at home in the league. Again, I bring that up because it's a huge game this weekend against probably a better team than the 3 that you mentioned that we've got to go and find a result, particularly with the superstar, global superstar in Antoine Griezmann. So overall, though, I think to answer your question, it's Drake Callender. If he plays like he did, I'm getting excited about where this team goes because that was a outstanding performance with some great saves. And if that level goes there, I think we will definitely be in good shape for this playoff run.
Yeah, it was another great night, John, from Drake Callender. Coming up big a couple of times. There was the point blank save against Timo Werner. I believe that was in the first half where Timo was on the run and it was a counterattack moment and it was just he was one-on-one and tries to go low and Drake Callender reads it all the way. There was a second half save that was essentially kind of somewhat similar where it was one-on-one if I'm remembering correctly, but it was another big night for Drake Callender.
Yeah, that one was at 3-1. That would have gone to 3-2, 2 minutes into the second half. That would have tested our kind of our own mental strength this year where we've kind of had to find. So I thought that was the biggest save of the game, the one in the second half.
John, Drake continues to impress in that role. Not the easiest of shoes to fill coming off of Dane's year last year, but he's continued to prove that he's every bit the caliber of goalkeeper that the Loons needed in net this season.
Yeah, you can sort of use this as a callback to the start where we were talking about how you assess the Khalid El Ahmad era. Good signing, solid goalkeeper. Got a guy who wasn't going to play a lot in Charlotte and pulled him in, and he's just a solid goal. And you can say, oh, well, you just got to get a goalkeeper, and that's easy. But as San Jose showed us, it's clearly not easy to just sign a goalkeeper and have it work out. It's clearly something that some teams struggle with, and that's just one of those signings. It's like, yeah, good signing, solid signing.
As Miami will point out, it's
local. He grew up in San Jose. He was in San Jose's academy. I think they let him go and they kept Murkowski, if I can remember correctly. So it was they probably are regretting that a little bit too. But it was nice. Drake's family was there. Super great for him to have such a good game for being a local kid.
That was 4 San Jose staffs ago, so you can't exactly slam him.
Ready to become part of the Minnesota United family? Place your deposit now to become a season ticket member for both the 2027 and 2028 seasons and lock in the best seats at the best prices all season long. Learn more at MNUFC.com/tickets. Down to your point, Inter Miami also prove you can't just sign a goalkeeper and change things. It has not been the season in goal that Inter Miami were expecting to get. Elsewhere,
it's very funny when you can't. Somehow, it's just funny to me when a team can't seem to find a competent goalkeeper. There have been so many teams that have been really good teams, totally undone by terrible goalkeeping, and it's always funny to me.
Then you look at the Loons' history in MLS, and there's good goalkeeper after good goalkeeper.
It's easy.
After good goalkeeper.
Why can't you guys just sign the good goalkeepers?
Yeah.
Elsewhere across the field, Manny, you mentioned Owen Jen. He had an assist on the night, his first goal contribution for the club since joining, but he was incredible with some of his runs, kind of holding up the runs and allowing Caldera and Yeboah to open up space and just threading in passes really well. His assist, or his pass on the assist, was outstanding, kind of on the outside of his foot, curls it around the defender or weights it perfectly into Yeboah, who's able to chip over the goalkeeper. I thought that was one of the best performances we've seen from Owen Jen, who continues to remain a really steady presence in that midfield for Minnesota.
Boy, steady presence, definitely. And, moving the ball in the defensive middle third is not a problem for him. I think he can even find forward passes and break lines in those two spaces. But when you can get contribution from him in the final third now, and him maybe evolving to get excited about getting forward, obviously he's got these long strides, and it doesn't look like he's running fast, but he really gets going and can get around the field. We've talked about that balance of needing more from our central midfielders offensively, and certainly this is a good sign if he can continue to do that. What I really liked about that third goal and that put away the kind of end of the first half, being up 2 goals and really put San Jose in a tough spot, is how he exploded out and got the ball to Joaquin Pereira, who's our number 10. He was in the middle of the field, and then he kept making a run. And Joaquin's like, I like this. I'm going to get him the ball. He's flying forward. He wants it again. And so I just love that little kind of 1-2 in the middle of the field that just driving straight up the field that puts San Jose in a world of hate and hurt in terms of us having to loading the numbers. And a great little pass and obviously great finish by Yeboah. So it was to me, when you look at kind of like the easy ones for me are Yeboah, Joaquin Pereira. You might even say Caldera, who's I want to talk about a lot because I think he helped Yeboah pop in this game. But there's no doubt Duncan and Owen sneakily had outstanding games. I mean, from the get-go, Duncan was getting the ball up high on the right and really getting in behind. And that's why I kind of mentioned maybe with Joaquin in the middle, that's allowed our wingbacks to get forward a little bit more. Ant had his typical great game where he had a great chance in the second half. Maybe could put us up 4-1 at the time. But, Owen and Duncan sneakily had some of the best games they've had in the Loons uniform.
Duncan continuing to do the thing that I like to see from that outside wingback role is getting to that end line on those runs and just creating space. Man, we saw it against Real Salt Lake. The switch with Bongi coming in and change that. He likes to get more inside, and he didn't have that threat going to the end line in the game for Bongi against Atlanta. But Duncan returning to the lineup, getting a pair of assists, becomes the third Loons player to have a multi-assist game against San Jose, joining Jan Gregush and Taniel Owache. A big night for him. He continues to play really well at that right wing back spot. I don't want to continue through this conversation without mentioning his nice game, but you guys have mentioned it a couple of times, and I know the fans have loved what they've seen from Marcus Caldera. Another big night from him, playing really well up top in that 2-striker formation, man. He gets his goal. Unfortunately, the cameras didn't capture it that well, but he played outstanding and got his goal that he justly deserved.
John, you want to take it first? Or you want me to?
I want you to go first. I want to hear your thoughts.
We'll start. Toronto kid, grew up there. Parents are Portuguese. He plays to me like kind of like an old Spanish or Portuguese forward, where you look and you're like, he's working hard, but it doesn't look like he's moving that fast. But to me, he's a great connector. I mean, he's so hungry to keep the ball. There was key moments in both halves where he really held it. Either got fouled or kept the ball moving. That made San Jose have to run back and get their shape deep in a block, and that allowed our guys to get excited about getting forward. I just haven't seen a lot of that in our forward play all year. I mentioned you guys, I thought in the first half, he and Kelvin And I think it was his ability to really see when to press and squeeze that got everybody excited to just go forward and start winning balls in good spots. So there was a defensive side that I thought his acumen was outstanding. And offensively, I think he connected the rest of our team in a way that our forwards haven't really been doing that well. And then I love that he showcased he likes to finish. He's been scoring a lot of goals for the second team. He wants to get in the box and do that. And that fourth goal was outstanding. It wasn't just winning the ball in a good spot. Once he won it, he was like, I'm turning, I'm going at the defender. I'm going to crush this ball because I'm good at that as well. So very excited for him. And I think we should be excited as a club because now this is 3 or 4 games where he's given this group a spark. And particularly these last 2 road games. Wow, what an impact.
John, for you, it's another strong performance from Marcus Caldera, another strong performance from a Loons draft pick, as the Loons are draft pick FC, it feels like.
Yeah, I really want to get excited. And then they play San Jose that has like 19 college soccer guys on the team. So it's a little hard. It's a little hard to really get excited about that method of building a team or Minnesota's edge in using that. So I kind of forgot.
Hey, I will point out, John.
Buddy. Think of Seattle. Seattle does a pretty good job with it too.
Yep.
I will point out, John, that looking through all those draft picks that San Jose has, there are a lot of like top end draft picks. Minnesota's are kind of everywhere on the board. A lot of San Jose's picks come from the top of the draft.
I will say I was talking with people yesterday, and we decided that if Philadelphia finishes last, their punishment as winning the wooden spoon should be that they have to make extra draft picks. Not only do they have to make their own draft picks for once, they have to make extra draft picks. Just tears running down their faces as they select more college soccer guys. You have to sign them too. They have to come into camp. You have to deal with college soccer guys in your team.
All right. For Marcus Caldera, your thoughts on how he performed and how he kind of sets up in this Loon squad going forward. How do you see him fitting in through the rest of the season here?
Yeah, I think Caldera's a really interesting guy because he scored a ton of goals in college and he scored a ton of goals in MLS Next Pro. And I talked to Fernando Adi, the MNUFC 2 coach last week about him. And it was one of those wonderful moments when something where you talk to a guy and they're like, yeah, we've really been working hard on his hold up play and on him, being tough and fighting off defenders. We're working hard on this. And then that is obviously on display on the field. Like he's getting assists from his hold up play and just like, this is something that he needed to develop in his game. And he's developing that in his game. And you look at that and you go, okay, if he can pick that up, what else can he pick up as we go? Like this is a prospect. And you mentioned fans getting excited. Is there anything more exciting as a fan than when there's a young prospect on your team that's starting to, this is like everything to do with the entire game of baseball is based just on that, hey, you hear about this guy at AAA that's been hitting, I guess what I'm saying is Marcus Caldera is the Walker Jenkins of Minnesota United.
Yeah, but he actually gets called up to the first team. But he actually gets called up to the first team, unlike Walker Jenkins.
That's right.
By the way, is there any more perfect teacher, Manny, for a guy like Marcus Caldera, big-bodied forward, than Fernando Adi? To have him teaching him how to score goals in this league, a guy who did that by the bucket load in his playing career, a perfect combination for Marcus Caldera, a perfect teacher for him to learn from to start his season. And now he's clearly picked that up and brought it to MNUFC, the first team here. Yeah,
I could see, Adi still very fit as well, pretending to be the center back and being that guy who gives him that physicality to try to hold it up. I mean, that's the nice thing about being a young coach and being as fit as Adi is. And again, that is exactly right. That was Adi's career, is really that hold up play and then turning and spinning and getting in the box and getting chances. But like I said, I want to get excited, and it just was such a fun, great weekend. We actually had some of our sponsor partners out that weekend and really added a lot to the entire club, and it added a lot to like us reminding ourselves after a really interesting, tough, adverse week in terms of people leaving the club that didn't want to be with the club, that we've got to take a deep breath and push to get better again. And I love that everything does come down to how the guys play in the field is such an important piece of it. It's not everything. There's preparation of that, but it certainly gets you excited. And then I certainly get humbled in that we've got to do this weekend. And I'm giving you the segue here because I think it's probably time for it, because it's a massive game this weekend. I mean, we had a great game finally. We scored 5 goals. This lineup seemed to give us a pop, but we just haven't done it at home. We haven't had the sharpness, haven't had the confidence. I think this is a great chance for us to get excited about what the last half of the season presents for Minnesota United.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking forward to this game at the weekend. Minnesota United hosting Orlando City. Obviously, the big note is Antoine Griezmann coming to town, and we'll talk about that. But for Minnesota, it's a return to home, a place that they have struggled to play at this season. Need to turn that around. When you go into this game, Orlando City coming in 3 wins in their last, 6 league matches, now somehow have crawled outside of the cellar of the Eastern Conference, where they occupied that pretty heavily through the first half of the season, now into the playoff spots in the Eastern Conference, which kind of took me by surprise when you're looking at their standings. But for me, Manny, it seems like Antoine Griezmann has really turned their season around and really made them a really competitive team in a tough Eastern Conference, that they've now clawed themselves into a playoff spot when it didn't look like this was going to be a season to remember at all in Orlando.
I think this is one of the coolest things about MLS is we will run into teams that have signed players that make you feel like a kid again and you get excited to watch. Like, take away the Minnesota United Orlando game. Every once in a while, the league, you'll find a player that, when you were younger or you followed for a couple decades, their career. And now you get to see him live in Minnesota. It gets a little bit like, you're like, oh, that's happening. And obviously Zlatan coming here. There's a few, and he's of that ilk. I mean, he really had created an amazing era of French soccer and really an amazing era of La Liga soccer, particularly at Atletico Madrid, where they kind of rebranded as one of the powers of Europe. And a lot of it had to do with him. So it's exciting just for any fan. I think anybody listening to the show, you should go watch the game this weekend just to see one of the all-time greats over the last 2 decades, and certainly one of the better players ever for France soccer and winning the World Cup as well. On the flip side, he's done well. He's given them an identity. He's given them composure. He's given them finishing. He's kind of given them a work rate around him that seems like they're a much better team than they were earlier in the year. And it's going to make this not an easy game for us. I mean, this is going to be a real test, and they've got a player that they signed that seems to be really making them a better team.
3 goals, 2 assists in 540 league minutes, John, for Antoine Griezmann since joining Orlando in the summer. He's been everything that they asked for and that they were expecting when he joined the club. What's the key for Minnesota for stopping him this weekend and putting in another good defensive performance that hopefully gives way and springboards the offense even further coming off of that San Jose win?
Honestly, it's one of those where obviously you're excited that Griezmann's doing well because you want guys to come in and do well, but it's a little disappointing just for the haters among us like me that really enjoyed when you got a guy like Gonzalo Higuain comes in and he basically is like, yeah, I really thought I was going to be able to smoke cigarettes during the game. I didn't think I'd have to run ever, that I could just walk around. It's always more fun when a guy comes in from Europe and is like, yeah, I thought I didn't have to run or do anything, but it turns out they actually do play soccer here. That's way more satisfying for me than a guy like Griezmann who comes in and helps turn around a season. As far as
we just found out John's favorite international transfer, big name transfer, was Steven Gerrard.
Yes, absolutely. Wow, this is a big country. You have to fly all the way across it. Who knew?
And I still want to do TV appearances in England when I'm playing in Los Angeles. Who knew that would be exhausting?
Who knew except everybody? Yeah. As far as stopping him, I'm remembering right that Griezmann is the one who's a basketball fanatic, right?
Oh yeah.
He loves basketball. I think the solution for the Loons is to get Rudy Gobert to show up and just sit near the field and hopefully distract Griezmann, because I feel like as starstruck as everyone will be playing against him, he would be just as starstruck having Gobert. Maybe Ant could come and just distract him.
I think we need Ant. I think the problem is Griezmann has good handle, but his handle, I've seen him play basketball. It's actually legit. Rudy Gobert's handle is not legit.
No.
So maybe he drove
down the lane this weekend in FIBA basketball play. I saw that.
Oh, I didn't see that. So
It was
did he?
I don't
incredible.
think that happened. That's
No, I
AI.
don't believe it. Did he go around his back? Did he go between his legs? What was
I
he
drove down from the top of the 3-point line. It was this isn't a basketball podcast. Let's get
There's
back to
never
soccer.
been a basketball player who was worse at holding the basketball in his hands than Rudy Gobert.
Yeah,
I saw it. I saw the highlight.
fine. We're
It
gonna get
wasn't a dream.
Gobert and Ant at
Yep.
the game this weekend. Yeah. Well, I like it.
And, if nothing else, we'll get LaMelo Ball and he'll probably drive onto the field and hit some guys. So,
All right. Sorry, boys.
sorry, we
Gave
almost
out
killed
there.
Jonathan with
I
this
know.
control
We just
joke.
went rogue. We know.
All right, Manny. Outside of Griezmann, what have Orlando been doing well since returning from the World Cup break? I know there was the little bit of a stretch where they lost 2 and drew 1, if I'm remembering correctly. But overall, 3 wins from 6 matches. It's better than they were doing for the most part before the World Cup. They've got themselves into the playoff positioning in the Eastern Conference. What have Orlando been doing well? What's the scouting report on Orlando City?
Yeah, I think the other one but sneakily they brought Daryl Dike back, a big physical player who either can start or come off the bench and just provide a lot of speed and energy. I still think it comes down to like they've kind of decided to be a defensive team a little bit again and have a little bit of shape and work around Griezmann. I mentioned that before. They've really committed, I think, to a little bit more getting guys back behind the ball, not just being stretched all the time, trying to go forward and create chances. So that's the biggest thing to me. Again, you sign a player like Griezmann, it can go one of 2 ways. You mentioned there's been history of some signings in MLS where you think it's going to pop just because they're playing good offense, but you got to have guys around that are hungry to kind of work on the areas of the field that they haven't been good, and they have not been good defensively for large stretches of this year.
First of 2 games over the next couple months for Maxime Crepeau at Allianz Field, as we know, the U.S. men's national team hosting.
Very excited about that game, by the way.
The Canadian men's national team coming up in October. Cannot wait for that. That one's going to be really exciting. But what's the importance of kind of getting the better of Maxime Crepeau, who's led in a ton of goals this season? He's turned things around a little bit as the defensive side has gotten back into shape for Orlando. John, what's the importance of kind of getting the better of him and putting him back into that mindset that he was in earlier this season, where he was shipping 40+ goals to start this season?
You're saying the importance of killing his confidence before Canada comes here?
Yes,
for
absolutely.
The U.S.?
Love it.
I
Give
like
him a
it.
bad
I like where you're
experience at
going with
Allianz
that.
Field now, and then when he comes here with Canada a couple weeks time, he has another bad experience.
That's right. That's all we're looking for here, is to help Canadian people feel bad about themselves, with the exception of Marcus Caldera, I guess is what we're going.
Yeah.
And I guess Dane Sinclair and Taniolo O'Shea, because we miss them.
Well, we got also Jesse Marsh for Racine, Wisconsin.
Yes,
We've got a
that's
lot
right.
of connections to the Midwest.
There is an odd amount of connections to the Midwest with the Canadians men's national team.
Jesse Marsh probably loves the Packers. Get him.
All right, I'm looking forward to this one. I imagine both of you guys, we've talked about and hinted at it. I don't imagine either of you guys think a change up top for Minnesota this weekend, right, Manny?
I mean, listen. We always talk about the challenges and the balance of what a coaching staff has to do in terms of picking a lineup and picking a system or structure. I highlighted the San Jose decisions because they were big, brave decisions by Cam that really finally got us out of an offensive funk. It's hard for me to imagine him going back to like a kind of Tomas and Joaquin Pereira, but he might look at Orlando. They might think about how Orlando's playing in their shape and say, hey, I think we have a better chance of getting at them with a single forward again. It's hard for my brain to see that, but that's what coaches get paid to do, and to see where they can have the advantages or where the guys who are healthy, there could be some injuries this week, et cetera. But at the end of the day, my brain can't imagine how well we played that he'll move away from that. And he'll keep that same group out there.
John, do you expect to see something similar to what we saw against San Jose?
I mean, just from a media perspective, I'd love for him to change it, and then we can talk about it. Like that would be a choice, and it would be a very annoyed Cam Knowles that had to answer that question after the game.
I'm looking forward to this one. At 7:30 kickoff at Allianz Field, Minnesota United hosting Orlando City.
I think it's one of our bigger home games in a long time, guys. I really do. Yeah. I mean, both because we got a superstar coming in, but I go back to like thinking about over the years how we've made Allianz pretty consistently somewhat of a fortress. And somehow we flipped or we're good on the road and just have struggled at home. And you can just feel the lack of confidence within the group. And again, I don't think it's going to be easy. I think this group is going to have to fight and work and have moments of, I think, not great soccer to figure out how to get 3 points at home in league play. But massively important. I just think for this playoff run and for us to kind of, what are we right now? I think we're 4 teams are on, or 4 or 5 teams are on the same amount of points in the West.
Yeah, 4 teams on 28, 1 on 27, another on 26. So very tight battle at the bottom of the playoff standings. And then it's 33 points is the next step up. So it's not that far away.
5 away.
That next tier. Yeah. So the race in the Western Conference continues to be compact outside of the top 2 in Vancouver and Houston. But yeah, this is when you look at the standings and you look at kind of the home performance, John, starting to get those home wins, starting to turn some of those home draws into wins, which we talk about the struggles at home. At least there's not a whole lot of losses. It's just 3 losses at home, but you still need to find a way to get wins, turn some of those 5 draws into home wins. It's very important if you're going to make a run at the playoffs and get outside of the wild card standings and get into the first round outright. You need to start putting together some of these home performances.
Yeah, everybody talks about doing the little things, marginal gains, and that's why I think Minnesota should use the visiting team locker room on Saturday. There's, near as I can tell, you got to try everything, and you got to do something with Allianz Field. Maybe it's a nice locker room. Maybe it's too comfortable.
It's a really nice locker room, actually, but I'm not going to agree with that one, John, but I like where your head's at.
Hey,
I like where you're going.
Some of the ideas are terrible ideas, and we just got to talk about them because maybe the terrible ideas is what you need.
Worth a shot. We got this game coming up, 7:30 kickoff at Allianz Field, Minnesota United hosting Orlando City. Pre-match show on 1500 ESPN, the Score North mobile app with Dan Terra and myself at 7 p.m. Looking forward to this one. Should be a big one. Loons must win at home, a much needed win at home if they can get it. They certainly do need it going into the second half of this season. John, appreciate you stopping by. Go subscribe to his newsletter over at JonMarthaler.com. Appreciate you stopping by, and thanks for the chat, and thanks for sending this thing off the rail a time or two.
Oh, it's always fun here. The more times we do it, the more I realize that nobody can stop me from saying the dumbest things possible, and I appreciate it.
Yeah,
I always look forward to it.
Yeah, no, it's state fair time too, so that's good. We're in a good space, so well done.
If you want to get stuck in traffic, come on over. Let's go
right to your neighborhood. Yeah,
we're ready.
Manny, we'll talk to you Saturday at Allianz Field for a big one for Minnesota United. Hopefully, we have a full house for a big game for the Loons. I'm sure we will, and we'll talk to you on Saturday.
Cheers, guys.
Loons fans, thanks for popping in and listening to us. We'll be back next week. Thanks to the production staff, Kyle Hayward, Grace Dearson, Evan Entler for putting this on every week, and we'll talk to you next week.